Oh, okay, what's going on here? You know what I'm gonna do? Let's try this. Unmute all. Unmute all. There we go. Everybody's muted, including me. And it looks like we are recording. Well, it's kind of interesting. I took a little bit of goofing around with it to get it rolling this evening, but thank you for being here. Welcome to this week's Matrexit discussion group call. As you know, the past 4 weeks we've been covering rabbit holes. And how many of them are really just rabbit traps, or they lead to nowhere? They are totally what I would call not actionable information. Things that you can't really use. You can argue it all you want, but it really makes no difference. Doesn't have anything to do with jurisdiction, doesn't have anything to do with the authority of the courts. And there are things that just sidetrack people and waste their time. And then when people end up hemmed up in a bad situation and try to use those things, they're confused as to why nothing worked. And what do they say? They turn around and say, oh, that's because the courts are corrupt. Well, it might not necessarily be because the courts are corrupt. It might be just that you weren't using good info. Tonight, I've titled this The Great Work. And this goes really down to who are you? Like I try and tell people every week, we need to learn who we really are, where we're really at, and where we're really from. And I've not really touched on that. I always felt that that was something that most people could explore or comprehend on their own. But it's also something that not everybody's thought about, who they really are. And so I'm going to get into that a little bit this evening. Like I said, the past 4 weeks we've been covering these rabbit holes. And in my journey, when I first started researching and learning things and looking at what was going on within the system, a lot of things just really did not make sense to me. The things that I was finding that people were talking about, a lot of these solutions that they claimed that existed, like I said, it didn't make sense. It just didn't really add up. Something felt wrong. And so I decided to get in and start studying and start researching on my own. And since there's so many of these different rabbit holes you can go down, whether it's jurisdiction or the right to travel or taxes, you name it, all the other different, maybe some people call them patriot mythologies, but there's so many of these things that I decided, I was going to hit each one of them head on and stick with it until I had my head wrapped around really what was going on, as opposed to what maybe false teachers were telling us. And so that's exactly what I did. I started getting into each of them one by one by one. And some of them may have taken 2 or 3 weeks. Some, believe it or not, might have taken 6 months. And it's not just a matter of going and looking at it 2 or 3 times a week. It was spending all my waking hours turning off the TV, turning off the radio, turning off all outside interference, and just paying attention specifically to each topic. Like I said, even if it took up to 6 months before I was satisfied in the knowledge that I had found. And it wasn't just a matter of finding maybe one answer, but you need to find that answer in multiple places. And it's just kind of like the scientific method, MOR, more. Is it measurable? Is it observable? Is it repeatable? Could I find that solution that I'd located was connected in multiple places? When I did, then I was satisfied with it and I'd move on to the next one. But there's something underlying with each and every single one of these, if you want to call them rabbit holes, or subjects or topics that we explore. And it really comes down to knowing who you are and knowing where you're really from. All of these teachings of law and the many more issues that school never taught only consist of really less than 50%, I'd say way less than 50% of what we need to have a fulfilling life. Everything this realm teaches is purely physical. There might be some things in, say, church or religions or spirituality that, you get into meditating, you think might be more spiritual as far as teaching goes. But really, the majority of everything that you find has to deal with the physical. When really our true realm that we're in is a spiritual realm. And it's spiritual things that are occurring inside our mind, our heart, our soul. That's where true power in this realm really is. And that's where the power in the next realm is going to be as well. I say this is like a proving ground. How are you going to be able to claim power and authority in the next realm if you can't handle it here? The greatest trick today is to keep us stuck in this carnal body. And when we say carnal, many people think of things that are sinful or evil, but carnal really just deals with flesh. It wants to keep us stuck in our fleshly body. And in the same respect, it's going to keep you stuck in this world, either as a sinner or as a debtor, and isolated from the spiritual realm where the majority of your power exists at. All teachings, whether it's religious, spiritual, or self-help, these are things that have been said for hundreds, even thousands of years in hundreds and thousands of different ways. You go back to the time of Hermes Trismegistus, with the Corpus Hermeticum, all the way to churchianity or today's New Age movements. Nothing's changed. This realm is a proving ground, like I said, for the next. We cannot expect to be a king or queen in the next realm if we can't master the authority here. Haven't we been told we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers in high places? If you look into the Greek, actually the Greek translation translates it as authorities. Yeah, there are various authorities that have been placed here. And I would say authorities in a form of suzerainty, which is similar to sovereignty. But there may be an authority over a city, another spiritual authority over the county, or the next one over a state, the next one over maybe a region of the world. We have to pay attention to these powers because they really do exist. I sat the other day and I thought, I've never really done it. Let me write down a list of each time I've had a serious encounter with one of these beings. And I quickly filled up one page. Didn't even have to really stop and dig in the recesses of my mind. They do exist. It really does happen. And most of us don't realize that it happens. And I want to explain why here. Because even though everything that's going on, the heart of it really lays at a spiritual matter, everyone only pays attention to the physical battle. Why are we paying attention to the physical battle? We're told it's not a battle against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers or authorities in high places. So what are we doing? Who or what is, for instance, for the United States of America, who or what is this American spirit? That's why it's also called the American dream. You cannot be experiencing this physically, only in spirit. What if the American spirit truly is a spirit? Because I'm fully convinced that it is. And not necessarily a benefactor either. In a physical battle, no one will confront the spirit. You arrived here by a divine spark, a spark of light that was discovered in 2011 at Northwestern University. They don't know where it comes from. They claim that there's an envelope of zinc that exposes this light and brings this light forward, but they don't know the real source, what really ignites it. A child experiences the spirit in reality, and when they're young, before they've been swayed from accepting the abstract world around them. They have imaginary friends. They may see spirits. You'll even notice that animals do the same thing. That they'll gaze off or look at things sometimes, and you're like, what are they looking at? Well, guess what? Your animals haven't been taught. They haven't been, you know, pushed down and said, "Oh, you're just seeing things," or "It's not real." And because these are things that are told children, and eventually we call it grow out of it. Well, it's not that they grow out of it, but they're growing into only really accepting what is physical and what they can actually taste, touch, and feel. We've been brainwashed that that's the only thing that exists, but it's not. And that's not really what's running things here. The funny thing is that later in school, when the children are taught, for instance, like algebra, which helps you recognize the abstract. But then you take this abstract concept in algebra and you attach it to something concrete, as if the abstract is man's theory and not necessarily spiritual, when it truly is spiritual. Churchianity has even hijacked spiritual teachings with things like the name it and claim it manifestation program. I think people would remember that probably from the 70s, especially in the 80s, and it's even taught today. Well, the Creator will give you the desires of your heart. This does not mean that your desire is placed there by the Creator. What it really means is the desire itself comes from Him. When you're walking with Him, when you're in communication with the Creator, if you're able to. Unfortunately, like I've said, this gets erased from people. Yeah, people talk about all that imaginary spirit in the sky or things like that. It really exists. But we've been taught and tempered into not paying attention to it. Not paying attention to, for instance, that still small voice, as some people call it. We ask for guidance, we ask for help, we ask for wisdom, we ask for grace. But who has really ever asked for those desires themselves? For the desires of the Creator to also be the same desires that we have, because those are the ones that He will fulfill. He will complete those, because that will aid in completing the ultimate plan that's been put in place for everybody. Yet everybody says they want to know why they're here. They want to know what their job is, why they've been put on this earth. But yet nobody really goes to them and says, I want my desires to be your desires. Once that's done, yes, He will manifest the outcome of the desires when those desires have been His. Only when we separate the physical realm from the spiritual realm is this ever going to happen. But everything put in front of people is to stay in the physical. This realm wants to totally separate you from the spiritual. And the spiritual is where the majority of your power lays at. It's not in a writ that you submit or a document that you submit. Not at all. It's even said that the heart of the king lays in his hands. But we're talking about knowing who we really are, or where we're really from, or what is our identity. For some people, that takes a long time to get past. I had to realize that I am not Brian Parker. That is not me. That's not who I am. That might be what I'm called by, but it's not who I am. That is not the divine spark that was placed there. The world asks who you are, not what, but though we always answer what. We really need to answer with the who that would really confuse them. And we answer with a title, or we may even claim to be a victim. Well, if you claim to be a victim, then guess what? You're going to be a victim. But that's not really who you are. If we claim to be a victim, our subconscious will even accept this agency or station in life. And that's not what we want for ourselves. That's not what the spirit within you wants for you either. The spirit's there, constantly knocking. Unfortunately, we've been taught to have our headphones on or have our head, back in the ages when I grew up, have your head buried down in your Game Boy, playing the Game Boy. Same thing today with all the different games on a phone. Myself, I don't know how people have time for it. There's way too much for us to learn, to be stuck there, to be stuck in that diversion, accepting a lower status. That lower status only feeds power to this adversary. This is what the physical realm continually teaches us to do. Live by fear and quick to be offended. None of this is a position of power. None of this is a position of authority. We can only take offense if we are overly concerned about others' opinion. Let me say that again. You can only take offense if you are overly concerned about others' opinion. The lion loses no sleep over the opinion of the sheep. Which one are you? This is to learn who you really are and where you are really from. This is the great work. It's very simple. It's not very complicated. I've just laid it out for you in just a few short minutes there. And these are not things that are brand new. Like I said, these have been taught to us for hundreds of years, thousands of years, in 1,000 different ways. But it can't be recognized. It's hard to recognize because it's spiritual, it's abstract. It's not something that's physical. So we're conditioned to ignore it. That's the absolute opposite of what we should be doing. In fact, everything we're taught to do is the opposite of what we should be doing. In fact, even the subjects that you're taught in school or university, those are the opposite of what you need to know. Those are all distractions. The power that you really want to find and the power that you really want to manifest is that which is physical. This plan has been going on for a long time. This is being done to people for a very long time. And nothing has happened other than it becoming more and more perfected, for lack of a better word. I mean, but even before, like what my shirt shows, East India Trading Company, even before that, that was just an aspect of all of this. I would review the statements that I made the last few minutes and get our minds wrapped around it. That we are not what you see in the mirror. It's just your earth suit. This is not what existed before you came here. That is not what will exist after you leave here. So we don't need to worry. We shouldn't be worried about perfecting what happens with this earth suit. It's the most temporary thing that your spirit is ever going to see. But though everybody spends all their time worrying about it. See how easy it is to distract people? Just show them a mirror, and people are easily distracted. Learning this really is the great work, because this is where your power is at. Thank you for being here tonight. I will see you next Sunday. Until then, like I always say, learn who you really are, where you're really from, and where you're really at. Because those are the things that have led everybody astray. Like I've said, these things have been taught to us over and over. At some point in the future, I want to explain or part of this philosophy. And it's not a philosophy or a theory, it's factual intel, it's factual intelligence, where this comes from. Because like I said, it's been around for thousands of years. All of these self-help people out there, and this is one of the reasons why I haven't done it, is because I didn't want to sound like one of these self-help people. Because all of those people have gotten their information from the same source. A lot of it might be just regurgitating what each other says or what they lay back in a sunny day looking at the stars and philosophize about. That might be where a lot of their stuff comes from. But the heart of it all comes from one source. And it's been out there for thousands of years. People just haven't recognized it. And so at some point in the future, I'm seriously considering exposing what that source is so other people can take a look at it. Because when you see it and read what was written thousands of years ago, well, little light bulbs come on. Things start making sense. And you start recognizing some of these things that these self-help people are teaching. And you also start seeing what in their programs they're using to lead you astray. Just like this whole idea of being connected to the physical and the carnal body is. The physical and the carnal is the same thing. Carnal doesn't mean sinful, evil. In fact, even evil, if you look into the Hebrew where it was used at in scripture, evil really just means dysfunctional. Doesn't that make a whole lot more sense? And in case anybody's thinking or considering this, when I say these ideas that the self-help people teach and some of the info that I just imparted to you this evening, when I say that this stuff was written down thousands of years ago, no, sorry. I know you're going to say it came from the Bible. Absolutely not. It was not printed in the Bible. In fact, the Holy Roman Empire and the Vatican did their best to keep it out of the Bible. But that doesn't mean that they ignored it and let it go. No, they use it. Because you can take any information and use that info either for you, or you can kind of back engineer it and use the same principles against people. And that's exactly what's been done. Get to know who you really are. To me, it doesn't matter who you think your creator is. The best thing to do when you wake up in the morning is greet your creator. Say hello. Say, I'm looking forward to having another exciting day with you. Can't wait to see what you show me. Stay in a constant state of communication with your creator and see what happens. Trust me, amazing things happen. Things occur in your life that you would have never, ever dreamed in a million years would occur. And the reason why is because we're stuck in the physical. We're only seeing a small portion of who and what we are and what this life is really about. We're missing the big picture. It's like going through life with like really dark sunglasses on and only getting kind of a glimpse or an idea of what's around you. That's exactly what's been given to everybody. When you learn how to dig into the spiritual realm, you see a whole new world. As I was mentioning earlier, this happens most often with children because they haven't been programmed yet. They have what we think are imaginary friends or see things that we think don't exist, but they can get conditioned out of that. I think the majority of us, if we looked back at our childhood, we would see times when we had that connection. There's a little saying, it goes way back, that, this little spot below our nose, above our lip, that little dimpled spot was placed there because when we were born, an angel pushed their finger on that spot for us to keep our mouths closed. Of course, that probably is not true, but if something like that did occur, believe me, it would not have been an angel from your creator that did that, because you're not meant to be silenced. Why do you think they are always trying to silence people? More so today than ever. Just in very subtle ways. Mostly in trying to embarrass you for what you're saying. Have a great week, everybody. Have a great week and the weeks ahead exploring who you really are, where you really came from, and where you're really at. Until next Sunday, good night.